CNN reported this morning that the Pentagon is developing a new family of attack plans focused specifically on Iran's chokehold capability in the Strait of Hormuz. The targets, according to multiple sources cited by the network, include small fast attacks boats, mine-laying vessels, and the asymmetric assets that have effectively shut the waterway. These plans are being drafted while a ceasefire is formally in effect. In Brussels, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, said today that talks with Iran must include nuclear experts. Otherwise, in her phrasing, the world will end up with a more dangerous Iran than before, and an agreement weaker than the 2015 JCPOA would effect in happen. In Washington, a Pentagon memo leaked this morning to multiple outlets reportedly floats removing Spain from NATO and punishing other member states that refuse to participate in the Iran war. In Tehran, Iran's IRGC reported boarding two container vessels, the MSC Francesca and the Epaminados, in the Strait of Hormuz this week. The U.S. announced an additional maritime interdiction of an Iranian oil-carrying tanker in the Indian Ocean. President Trump told reporters that if Iranian boats continued to lay mines in the strait, the United States would, in his words, shoot and kill them. A forever war is not a war that lasts forever. It is a war whose architecture is designed in such a way that no political actor inside it has an incentive to end it. Korea technically has been a forever war since 1953. Afghanistan was a forever war for 20 years. The American posture in Iraq became a forever war within 18 months of the 2003 invasion. The signature of a forever war is not the duration, it is the structure. And the structure is being assembled in front of us this week. Consider the components. 1. A ceasefire with no expiry date. 2. A blockade that the president openly describes as his primary lever and which both sides cannot live with indefinitely. 3. A Pentagon planning cycle that is producing new strike packages while the ceasefire is still nominally in effect. 4. A domestic political incentive for the president to neither escalate decisively nor de-escalate decisively, because the polling shows the public disapproves of the war while a hard partisan core supports continued pressure. 5. An opposition in Tehran that, in President Pezeshkian's exact words today, refuses to let Washington split the country into negotiable factions. 6. An absent supreme leader whose silence is itself a strategy. 7. Allies who are publicly distancing themselves but who have not yet broken with Washington. 8. A pope who is criticized, an EU that is sidelined, a NATO that is being internally threatened. And 9. A mediator who is daily attacked by the regional press for the sin of being the only diplomatic actor in the room. That is the architecture. And that architecture, once built, takes on a life of its own. The honest reading of this week and the question hence is whether the architecture of a forever war is now in place, and what, if anything, can disassemble it before it sets. We have Mr. Wajid Minhas with us, who is working at the University of Gloucestershire as a regional director for South Asia. Thank you so much, Wajid, for joining us. Let me start the discussion with a structural question first. The Pentagon at the moment is drafting new strike plans during an active ceasefire. The president is saying, I'm talking about President Trump, that don't rush me. And the blockade is being framed as a permanent lever rather than a temporary measure. From your reading of how wars turn into forever wars, are we watching in real time another forever architecture being assembled?
I think that very much depends. What I believe is that the Iranian behavior right now is very crucial. I think the way the Iranian state responds is very important to wait and see. If the Iranian state now respond more prudently, more wisely, I think that will help not only for Iranians to come out of this conflict, but also for USA and for the world. I think the USA is in a difficult situation. What happened, in my understanding, is that President Trump, who is known as a cowboy kind of diplomat leader, I think his mentality is very individual-centric, and I think not as much the homework was done for this war when they started. So you can see clearly a divide between President Trump administration and the Pentagon from the beginning. So I think now, because they have got stuck into this. So ultimately, the Pentagon has to come into play. And you might have seen there are a few changes in military leadership recently. I think these changes also indicate that the Pentagon has been given a task ultimately. If they don't reach to this kind of agreement, then I think they will then take it more seriously. So far, I think for USA, it has been a war of choice. But now I think from now onwards, if the situation doesn't de-escalate, then ultimately they have to take it more seriously and more strategically. So I think this is where some optics are being shown by Pentagon and by the USA government that if you don't give us an option, ultimately we have to take it more seriously and take you to the account, and that then maybe Iran may have to pay a big price in that situation. So I think going back to first point, Iran has it's a very high time right now for Iranian diplomacy, I guess, because they are in a winning situation right now. I think now the question is to win this whole thing on the table, and this is where I think it's a real test for the Iranian diplomacy. So I think very much the Iran has to play right cards to come out of this whole chaos.
Iranian president, since you're talking about Iranian side, that they need to show up. Pezeshkian on record said yesterday that there are no radicals or moderates in Iran, only Iranians and revolutionaries. That language is not rhetorical. It is a direct rejection of the Western diplomatic premise that internal Iranian factions can be played against each other. From your view, the US is chasing a fracture in Tehran. Is it going to work this way? Because the way I look at it, they are coming out in more solidarity than ever.
I think they have to, because what maybe in the beginning, maybe the miscalculation happened by US was that they thought Iran is the second Venezuela. So I think they tried to replicate that episode in Iran, but obviously they simply forgot that Iran at the end of the day is a civilization. They are a nation, and when a foreign aggression comes into any nation, I think people become more united. So I think this is what exactly happened. So there was a miscalculation on the American parts when they started this whole episode. But now I think the fraction is clearly on both sides, by the way. As I mentioned briefly, there is a clear divide between the Pentagon and Trump. On the other side, we can see a clear divide between the Iranian ruling capture or ruling elite, whatever. So the Revolutionary Guard is on one side somehow with some differences, and then the Iranian political leadership is showing some more, pragmatic approach now. They really want to get to an agreement, but that is there. We cannot just deny that there is no division between the Iranian regime. There is, but the question about USA benefiting from this situation still remains valid. I don't think so. I don't think that fraction between the Iranian regime will benefit USA in any ways. But if they take this to kind of a long-lasting conflict, then that might down the line help USA. But immediately, I can't see that happening. I don't think whatever the fraction is there between the Iranian regime that can help USA immediately. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, that happened in Afghanistan, that happened in Korean War, that happened in a couple of wars that U.S. thought it can get into and get out quickly, but it turned into a forever war because the conflicts are structurally older. When the situation is that, it's not easy for any of its current participants to just do a limited strike and, just get the results. For example, in Iranian case, the 1953 coup, the 1979 revolution, the 8-year Iran-Iraq war, JCPOA collapse, killing of Qasem Soleimani to Khamenei, from a historian's vantage, if I look at it, to be analytically honest, it's not an easy war. There is no easy end to it. So what should we expect?
Okay. I think totally agree. I think you very well framed it. That is the reason you see the both sides at somehow are very serious about these talks happening in Islamabad. And I think both sides at the back end, they know that there is no winner in this war at the end of the day. So the American establishment, American regime do understand that it's not easy for them to get out of this chaos now, which they have started from nowhere, unfortunately. So I totally agree. I don't think that it's an easy peasy kind of win for America, even for Iran. I think both parties don't have a choice there to go further into this escalation. I think ultimately they have to come to the table and resolve this issue through the talks. They both know, but I think at the same time, they both are having this egoistic problem, if you like. They both want some kind of a safe passage for each one. So maybe there is some face saving required for Trump as well as for the Iranian regime, just to satisfy for the consumption of domestic audience. I think this is what they are trying to do. But within that, I guess their ego is hurting, and I think this is where the role of mediator like Pakistan comes into play, and it's very significant that Pakistan is playing a great role, and they are trying their best using their fine diplomacy and preventive diplomacy to bring the tension down. And I hope that in next few days the things go de-escalated, and maybe things go more calm, and ultimately we reach to some sort of
at least some sort of framework in place for the future negotiations. I'll come to the American domestic picture that you've mentioned in a bit, but the international architecture is fraying in real time, and we have not seen that since, I would say a century. For example, the Pope criticized the war, and he was dismissed in real time by the president of US. Look at the EU's foreign policy. Chief is warning that the deal will produce a more dangerous Iran. There is a Pentagon memo that proposes that expel Spain from NATO because, they are not towing their line. So even elite capitals, Madrid, Rome, Berlin, are expressing doubts that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago, let's put it this way. Is this an early stage of a fundamental realignment of the Western alliance system?
Definitely. I think a new world order is in making right now. But the difficulty is that what will be the shape or the scale and size of the new world order? Because the problem is that the world has been into a unipolar sort of world for the last few decades. And now if this pendulum shift from one place to another, like from America to China, that will not even help. So I think the confusion is very, very evident, very clear amongst all the leadership, amongst all the regions. And that is, I guess, happening because there is a natural shelf life of everything. So the international law, the rule-based law, which we have been witnessing after the Second World War, I think that is now collapsing. But that is collapsing at a very fast scale. I think the dilemma is that it is not collapsing, in different stages. It's collapsing all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, so true. Especially ever since Trump has taken office, it is more visible than ever.
Actually, Trump just made it more visible because Trump is not to forget, he is a businessman, and I think he wrote a book back in 2012, Think Big. In business and life. Now, I think the business is a different thing.
He's applying it to the real-time geography.
I think that's what the dilemma is. A real estate swagger is now controlling the power corridor of the world, and unfortunately, he doesn't know deep down the politics, the international diplomacy, and that, as I said in the beginning, that cowboy mentality, very self-centric individual mentality, actually is causing the problem. But is that a problem? Is that a problem in this current mediation as well? Because one day he says something else, the other day he says something totally the opposite, and then the kind of people he's sending to negotiate are actually realtors. They are not negotiators. They are not diplomats. Do you think that is also a problem? Definitely, that is a problem. I think he's putting everybody into a difficult situation. To Pakistan, to Iranians, to USA itself. He needs to shut his mouth for a few days. I guess that might help a lot to the world. But I'm really surprised that what actually is happening on the diplomatic side of the Americans, for example, where are these sand people who can at least tell him, sir, to please shut down for a few days? That can help not only to the world, but also to America. And he maybe does not really understand or realize that what big problem he has created for the whole of the world, not only for USA. And that problem will be mounting up now onwards, because I think last 8 weeks was initial kind of the period we have gone through. But now I think every passing day, what people are saying is getting into a big global inflation now. If I very briefly talk about the economical side, you remember from 2008, for example. So if we look at 2008 recession figures, the debt was 130% of the total world GDP. That is again back to that stage. During the COVID, it was 158% of the total GDP. Right now, we are again somewhere around 140.
Wow.
So a big recession is definitely coming ahead, and
Yeah.
the international organizations are warning about it, and they are saying that already 30 million people have gone
So
below the
we are getting very
line
close
because
to
of
the one near pandemic. That is 158.
yes.
Yeah. My last question to you is about the domestic American picture that you talked about, because the forever kinds of wars require a domestic permission structure. Trump is at 33% approval. 2/3 of the American public disapproves of this war, and yet there is no operative congressional constraint. Where is Congress in all this?
I think if it depends again on this deal, for example, next couple of weeks, a few weeks are very crucial for Trump's political future. If at the end of the day, if they get a deal done with Iran, I think then Trump will have something to go back to the public and try to convince them that I have done this, I have concluded it very quickly, blah, blah. Because as you mentioned, American history is that they've been into long kind of conflicts previously. So Trump can say that I have winded it up like in like few weeks, and still maybe that can give him some sort of safe passage, but I don't think so that he will survive during the midterm election, to be honest, and I think he will pay a big political price of this misadventure he has done in Iran.
Wajid Minhas, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you. So if the Iran war is structurally becoming a forever war, and if the only diplomatic process producing actual ceasefires is the Pakistani-led mediation in Islamabad, then a particular question becomes urgent. Why is that mediator being attacked? Who benefits from undermining the room in which the only ceasefire of this war was negotiated? After the break, a defense of the peace and the mediator. Oslo, Camp David, Algiers, Doha. What mediation actually is, what it cannot be. Stay with us.